A very successful CEO once told me something that has actually stayed with me ever since. And he said he wished he had a life like mine. Now, this was a man who was extremely wealthy. He ran a large manufacturing business and he had achieved, by most measures, everything that society considers success. But he was exhausted. He was stretched across every function, every decision, every meeting. And his phone never stopped ringing. His calendar was like a wall full of commitments. He had not taken a proper holiday in years, and he was sitting across from me saying, I wish I had what you have. Now, he did not need more money. He did not need a better strategy. He did not even need better people. He needed someone to look at the system he had built around himself and show him that the system was the problem, not him, the system. That conversation changed how I think about everything I do, because what that CEO was describing is not burnout. It is not a time management problem either. It is a specific, diagnosable, fixable gap in the leadership operating system. And it is the single most important gap I will ever talk to you about. For those who don't know me, my name is Vijay Mistri. I'm a leadership operating system architect. And today I want to show you why gap number 8 of the 15 gaps, what I call the founder's bottleneck, is the most connected gap in your entire business. Now, if this is the first video of mine you're watching, let me explain what I mean by a gap. A gap is not a vague feeling that something is off. It is actually a specific, measurable dysfunction in your leadership system that I can identify, quantify in pounds or dollars, and fix with a structural intervention. And I identified 15 of these gaps across 5 dimensions: collective intelligence, strategic clarity, governance architecture, cultural integrity, and financial command. And every leadership team has, in my opinion, between 5 and 8 active at any given time. The founder's bottleneck sits in the governance architecture dimension. But what makes it unique is that it reaches into every other dimension and holds other gaps in place. Now, most gaps are self-contained. Leadership fragmentation sits in collective intelligence. Financial blindness sits in financial command. They cause damage in their own dimension. Now, the founder's bottleneck is different because when it is active, it triggers or amplifies 5 other gaps simultaneously. The team fragments because the CEO is the only point of alignment. You remove the CEO from one meeting and the team diverges. And that is gap number 1. Nobody challenges the CEO because confronting the founder feels career limiting, which is gap number 3. Every decision queues at one particular desk, which is gap number 7. Meetings exist to brief the CEO rather than to decide, which is gap number 9. The CEO's personal oversight replaces any structural accountability. So when the CEO is absent, accountability disappears, which is gap number 11. And execution depends entirely on the CEO's attention. When that attention shifts, execution is going to stall, which is gap number 12. Imagine 6 gaps, 1 root cause. That is what makes this the most connected gap in this entire system. You just have to fix this one and the other 5 begin to resolve on their own. and leave it in place, and every intervention you try, every training program, every strategy session, every new hire will be fighting the architecture that holds it. What I want to do is I want to give you one number, just one number. Say you are a CEO of a £3 million business, and your blended cost to the business is say between 100 to 150,000 pounds per year, including salary, benefits, and opportunity cost, and you're spending 30% of your time on decisions that should be made by someone else. That is about 30 to 45,000 pounds per year of CEO time on the wrong tasks. But that is not the real cost. The real cost is what you are not doing with that particular time. Business development, strategic partnerships, innovation, the conversations that only a CEO can have, the thinking that only happens when you have headspace. If even a quarter of your reclaimed time goes into growth activity, the revenue impact is 50 to 150,000 pounds per year. Now, in a £10 million business, multiply those numbers by over 3. In a 30 to 50 million pound business, the compounding effect is significantly larger because the decisions are bigger, the ripple effects reach further, and the opportunity cost of the CEO being stuck in operations is measured in millions, not thousands. That is the cost of just one gap, the founder bottleneck alone. And this is before you add the cost of the 5 gaps it triggers. So here's the shift that every CEO who has this gap needs to make. And it is not a structural shift. It is actually a mindset shift. So there are 2 modes a CEO can operate in. One is the operator mode and the second is the architect mode. Now, operator mode is I run the business, I make the decisions, I check the work, I attend the meetings, I'm in everything because that is how quality is maintained. Architect mode is I build the systems that run the business. I define who decides what. I install the accountability architecture. I create the governance rhythm. And then I step back and let the system do what it was designed to do. Operator mode build your business from zero to where it is today. It worked because you were small enough that one person could hold everything. But the same mode that created the business is now capping it. The business has outgrown the operator, and what it needs is it needs an architect. So here's something I want you to remember. What got you here is exactly what will keep you stuck here. That shift from operator to architect is the single most valuable transition a CEO can make. And it is the hardest because it requires letting go of the very behaviors that made you successful. Not because those behaviors were wrong, because the business has outgrown past the point where they work. So let me show you what happens when you fix this gap. So when the founder bottleneck is removed and the CEO's decision involvement drops from say 70 to 80% to below 20%, a domino effect begins. Decisions speed up because they are no longer queuing at one desk, which resolves gap 7. Meetings become decision forums because they no longer need the CEO to function. That resolves gap 9. Leaders start thinking independently because the system now gives them the permission. That begins to resolve gap number 1. Challenge becomes possible because the founder is no longer the untouchable center, which begins to resolve gap number 3. Accountability becomes structural because the system tracks commitments instead of the CEO chasing them, which resolves gap number 11. And execution improves because it is no longer dependent on one person's attention. That resolves gap number. One gap fixed, others begin to heal. That is the domino effect. That is why I always look for the founder's bottleneck first in every diagnostic. Because if it is active, fixing anything else is like rearranging furniture in a house with a cracked foundation. Now, here's the deeper layer that most consultants never reach. Underneath the founder's bottleneck, there's almost always a mindset barrier, and I call this the scar tissue. It comes from Zen philosophy, and it describes what happens when a leader has been burned in the past. And this could be a hire who failed, delegation that went wrong, a decision that someone else made that cost the business money. These experiences leave scar tissue, and scar tissue creates hesitation. The CEO holds on tighter because letting go feels dangerous. They check everything because the last time they did not, something actually broke. The structural fix, the decision rights framework, the escalation criteria, the accountability rhythm, those are essential. But without addressing the scar tissue, the CEO will unconsciously resist the architecture. They will agree to delegate and then check the next morning. They will publish the decision rights and then override them when something feels risky. That is why my diagnostic addresses both layers, the structure as well as the mindset, the architecture and the human barrier underneath it. Because you cannot coach your way out of a structural problem, and you cannot restructure your way out of a mindset problem, because you need both. I fix the system, not the people, but the system includes the mindset that holds it in place. The founder bottleneck is gap number 8 of 15, but it is the gap that holds the most other gaps in place. If you fix nothing else in your leadership system, you need to fix this one. And if you want to test whether it is active in your business, then I have some resources for you. First is the CEO Scorecard, which has a question designed specifically for the governance architecture dimension. The only 5 questions would take you 60 seconds free. I'll leave a link in the description below. Or if you want, you can download the CEO Blindspot report. It's about 12 pages, all 15 gaps, the complete picture, free. Again, I'll leave the link in the description below. Or you can take the Gap Unlock Questionnaire at vijay.com. There are only 12 questions, 3 minutes, and I personally review every single response. Again, I'll leave a link below as well. I'm Vijay Mistri, clarity first, impact fast. I'll see you in the next one.